Good evening and welcome back to Church Unplugged with Shield of Faith. We are so excited and so blessed that you are joining us this evening for our open and honest conversation on grief. I am super excited to be joined tonight by Mr. Frank McElhaney, who is the lead pastor here, as well as his daughter, Tanya Cummings. We are super excited to hear the things that they have to say and just to have a conversation on grief tonight. Before we get started, make sure that you don't forget to comment any questions that you have, anything you'd like to say. We love hearing from you guys. My name is Jade Ruggarello, and I will be the host for tonight's discussion. And with that said, we're going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, guys. How are y'all?
Great. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Thank you so much. Well, I wanted to kind of start tonight just by alluding to the past episode that we did. Some of you guys may be aware, back in January, I believe it was, we kind of spoke on grief, a little bit on mental health. That's kind of, actually, I think it was one of the first episodes we did.
Yes.
Of Church Unplugged. And with May being Mental Health Awareness Month, we wanted to kind of revisit some of those topics. And so tonight we're going to be speaking on grief, but specifically on supporting those who are grieving, which is something, especially throughout the past year, that has been very prominent in the world. So I just wanted to begin this evening by asking you both just what your experience with grief has been, just a little overview and anything you'd like to share on that.
You want to go first?
No.
No? Okay. Actually, the last 6 months, for me, I've experienced quite a bit of grief on all different sides. I've lost, it was really kind of crazy. My oncology appointment last Friday, whenever it had been 6 months since I had last seen my oncologist, and she was asking me how things had been, and it was at that moment that it really struck me, like what all I had faced when it had come to losing people that I cared about, and even in a part of it supporting someone who close to me who's lost someone. But back in November, one day Scott lost one of his best friends. The next day I lost one of my childhood close best friends. And then we got back and after spring break, and I lost one of my close friends, lost her son, and walking through that with her was extremely hard. And then just recently I lost my mother-in-law. But my grief time really started for me back whenever one year I had lost a close friend of mine. And then a year later I lost my grandmother, and a year later I lost my mom. And then a couple years later I lost my grandpa, and then I lost my Aunt Susan. So it's been a lot of loss, I think, here lately, and that experience-wise. So.
It's been a lot of loss. Part of that is when you're a pastor, you're a little bit on a different side of it, even though you may be involved as a family member or a close friend of those. It's still a little bit because you have to handle a lot of things. And what I've noticed is people do okay while they still got things to do.
Yes.
And it's after everybody goes home and you begin to partially deal with things. Now, I'll be honest with you, different people handle grief different ways.
Yes,
some people you can't tell anything's been wrong. Other people fall to pieces. And you have to be willing to support both.
Right.
Both kinds. I'm one that doesn't go to pieces. Generally, I don't act like there's anything wrong, but people that are close to me can tell.
Yeah.
So I'm not a person that likes to talk about it, so I'm not good in groups. I have friends that they lost spouses, and they had like a group, support group, and they actually, as far as I know, that was like more than 10 years ago, and they were still involved in with the people that helped them through that. So there's a lot of ways, but I'll be honest with you, I had a couple of friends that, and I'm talking about the death of my wife 10 years ago. I had a couple of friends that knew me, and what I would do is I would just get on my motorcycle and ride, and one of my friends would say, "Hey, where are you going?" I said, "I don't know." He'd say, "Well, just hang on a minute, I'll go with you." And so we may ride to San Antonio or Fort Worth or wherever, and he just, I mean, we didn't have communication or anything. He just went with me, and then we'd stop, we'd get something to eat. But as time went on, I realized, I have a friend down the street, I'd have periods of, I didn't want to see anybody talk to me, I didn't want to go nowhere, and he would call me, and he would say, if I didn't answer the phone, he would come knock on the door, and he would say, "Hey man, I fixed breakfast." Yeah. I'm not even thinking about getting up, it's going to get cold, and you come down and get it. I'm not going nowhere. Well, I'll bring it down to you in a minute, Just did not, talk to me about stuff or try to make anything better or not. Just wanted me to know that I wasn't alone. Yes. And to me, that was really a support, even though it may not sound like neither one of those guys are professionals. But the thing is that all of the people that Tanya just mentioned were people that I knew also, and you have different ways of dealing with it, and especially if you're close, the closer you are to a person, you have to be ready to kind of step in and support people. And sometimes, I know I'm talking more than I probably should, you shouldn't just try to get people to get over it or something like that. The best thing I can tell you as a pastor, if you don't know what to say, just don't. Yeah. Trying to tell people they're in a better place or that kind of stuff's not helpful.
Right.
Just being there. Sometimes all you need to be there. I've seen people just be with a person and hand them what do you call it?
A Kleenex.
Kleenex.
Yeah.
Whenever they need it, when they start,
Right.
they just be there. They're not there. They don't tell them what to do or anything, and really, a lot of times, I'll be honest with you, I have been to memorial services where the person was in such state of grief that they couldn't tell you who was there.
Right.
The only way they knew was they read it in the book. And so you just have to, and I'll be honest with you, just because you react one way in grief at one person, that doesn't mean that's going to be the way you react every time.
Right.
You'll be surprised at the way grief happens. So I think there's supporting those who are grieving is a very broad topic. And,
Absolutely.
And what I'd like to discourage is trying to solve those people's problems for them.
Absolutely.
I think supporting is a key word there, and we need to realize that support sometimes is really just that. It's just support. Maybe just go stand beside them. That's just
Absolutely.
Or give them a hug. Some people don't realize how much a hug is worth.
Yeah.
And
I like how you said not to rush them through or think they just need to get over it. I feel that that's one of the, when we're uncomfortable sometimes, we don't want people to hurt and we want them to be better so that it helps us feel better.
Absolutely.
But I think one of the best things that we can do whenever we are walking with someone who is grieving is to listen, because
absolutely.
and know that they want to be able to share about their loved one, and so many times people don't, because they think just that people are tired of hearing them talk about that person, but it brings them joy, and it helps to bring back to them the memory of beautiful times
Absolutely.
in the midst of times that they're hurting. And so sometimes just listening to them talk about some of their favorite memories with that person, or things that they miss about that person.
Right.
And then you kind of, if you didn't know that person, through walking with them through that, you then begin to know that person in a deeper way as well, and appreciate that the life that they had.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, and I mean, it's perfect. You guys have touched on a couple of things I wanted to mention. One of them being, that grief it's a journey.
Yeah.
It is
There's
a
not
journey.
an end date. There's not a manual for
Right.
how to grieve. And I actually wanted to, as I was preparing for tonight, I'm going to look down just because I don't want to misquote anything here, but I found a definition, I guess, of one definition of grief that I thought was really interesting. So I wanted to read it. And it says that grief can be described as an internal loss. It's the things and the emotions that we feel in the aftermath of a loss. It doesn't have a date that it ends, or an expiration date, and it's a continuing journey. And this part I really like, and it says that each person's grief is unique to them, just like the person that they lost was unique to them.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that's very interesting, because everybody can have a different, even if somebody or a group of people lose the same person, they can grieve and feel grief in different ways, because depending on their relationship with that person.
And
Yeah.
just like Tanya was talking about, and don't be afraid to talk about the person.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Don't
Absolutely.
avoid talking about them, because just talk about them. You love them, they love them, and sometimes we avoid talking about that person because they're not here. But sometimes people need to know that it's okay for them to talk too.
Absolutely.
And one of my friends that walked with me had known my wife a long time, and he really, both of them had known him for years, but just and see the church. Everybody here knew her and loved her, so that was a whole journey by itself. And but the Bible tells us that if you're a believer, that we go to be with the Lord. And it says, and I'm paraphrasing, really making it really short, just by virtue of the fact of the time we have. But it says for us to comfort one another with these words. And so knowing that that this physical life isn't the end of it,
Right.
is something that should comfort us. And so when we have times where we grieve, and there can't be a time limit on it, but there's and I'm going to mention this, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I want to mention it. But there's a dark side to grief.
Yes.
If you go there.
There is, absolutely.
And it was what was happening to me when I didn't want to get out of the house. I didn't want to get out of bed. I didn't want to go anywhere. I didn't want to talk to anybody. But I had a couple of friends that wouldn't put up with that.
Yeah.
And so, and a daughter.
And a daughter.
But I can't say how much Tanya, I mean, it was just incredible how much she helped me with that, where I felt like I should be helping them. You know what I mean? But I was broken. And so what I'm saying is, don't allow yourself to go to the dark side of that, and let depression become if you get to that place, you need to seek help.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Professional help.
Uh-huh.
But if you're dealing with, like, you can be I don't know, I can be driving down the road and just go past a place that shared a memory and takes me back there. And I don't regret that. I mean, so you could say, well, grief is what I'm trying to say is grief's not a bad thing.
Right.
It is because the time that I had with my wife, much less some of the other people, you have to understand, most of the people she mentioned, I did the memorial service for.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So, it is that it's a privilege to have been a part of that time in their life, and so it's something that isn't bad. I mean, crying isn't bad.
Right.
It's and memories that you have and share aren't bad. Grief is not a monster. It's really a process.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And
That's
and
good.
it doesn't mean that you get over it. It means that you go on with your life, and a step at a time. You can't run away from it. I guarantee you can run away from it for a while,
It'll catch up to you.
but it will
Yes.
catch up to
Yeah,
you and
absolutely.
smack you really hard.
Absolutely.
And I know I've met a lot of people that just act like they didn't care about anything, and then all of a sudden, I have a lot of help. Someone that I really need to pour a lot of time into because it's caught up with them. So I want to encourage people: don't run from grief. Don't be afraid of it. It's a part of the way God designed us to be able to deal with losing someone we love, or someone,
And take the boldness or have the boldness to be able to, if you see someone that is grieving and you see a shift in them where they may be going towards, as Dad said, the dark side of grief,
Right.
have the boldness, ask the Lord to give you the boldness
Yes,
to be
help
able
them.
to talk to
Absolutely.
them and say, hey, I'm seeing that you're not wanting to be involved in things anymore. I can see that there's a shift there, and offer to pray with them, to help them. Do you want me? I caution people, it's really, really hard when people say go and get help. We do need to stop and go and get help. But I don't know about any of you guys, but when you try to go and find a counselor, it is not that easy.
Yeah,
There's
that's
a
true.
lot of counselors out
It's
there.
overwhelming sometimes.
It is.
Yeah.
And so sometimes even just saying, like, I will sit with you as you, sift through all of them. If you hear of a good counselor, to be able to suggest someone, it's kind of daunting. And I know myself, I've been there in the place where I'm like, I start the process and then I stop because I'm thinking, I don't know, who do I pick? And, but to just let them know that you want to, you see that they're struggling,
Who am I going to go talk to? I don't trust anybody.
Yeah,
Anyway.
it's hard.
No, I'm not going.
But we need to be able to.
But but that's the whole point of it is that sometimes they're not going to talk to you. You need to talk to them.
Yeah.
It's just like, if nothing else, offer them a taco, man.
Right.
And that's just something to let them know they're still connected.
I like, Tanya, that you said, use the word boldness, because I think sometimes, whether it's in grief or any other area of life, we can want to help so bad, but we can be afraid. We don't want to offend anybody.
Yeah.
We don't want to cross a line. We don't want to, assume anything. I think those are things that just as humans we feel scared to do sometimes. So I think that's a really good reminder is, it's just make sure that you speak up if you do see something or a change or a shift. And I want to pause for one moment and just address some comments. Hi, Sister Gail and Brother Lewis. We're so glad that you guys are watching us. Casey commented and said, thank God for my friends and Tanya for helping me breathe in my moments.
Oh, I love her.
Pastor Scott said grief can become crippling if it's allowed, so it is so crucial to be present in one another's lives. Absolutely.
Absolutely. And to realize that just because someone is going about their day and life, and I think that's one of the things, actually Casey and I were talking about that earlier today, the struggle of everybody's life goes on like normal about you, and you're stuck there going like, you feel it, and people forget. And one of the best things a pastor said after my good friend Susan's funeral, he said at the end of it, just call. Like, if you feel it, if they don't want to answer the phone, they won't. If they don't want to text back, they won't. But that might be that one time that they do, that you're that person that calls them to encourage them at just that time. And two, that when everybody goes about their life, that's really when we need to dive in. So sometimes being checking on someone 2 or 3 weeks afterwards is more powerful than checking on them a couple of days after.
Absolutely.
Because it's when no one else is checking in.
Absolutely.
And they're going about their lives, and you're sitting here going, wait. But don't think just because people are going to work and going out to go do things and going to the park and being at family things, don't think that they're not grieving anymore. That's not true.
I think too, even and we've talked about this many times, but even anniversaries.
Yes.
Yes.
The
Mother's
anniversary of their
Day.
passing, yes, or just
Father's
or even
Day.
just days or times of the year that bring back certain memories or certain times. I think a lot of times people we just don't necessarily realize that could be a really difficult time, depending on the circumstances. And so and I think it's important too to remember, like you said, it doesn't have to be any big thing that you do, even if you just send a text or a call and just say, hey, I'm praying for you today, and I want you to know I love you.
Let me jump in and say, don't
Of
make
course.
that just a week or two. Make that 6 months or a year
Absolutely.
down the road.
Yes,
Don't-
absolutely. Don't forget.
Years
Yeah,
down the road.
you get a chance to talk to people, and we're a fast-moving society now. So people like to think that they can just pick up and go on, and it's like, and I'll just say for me, I've always, whatever hit me, if I get up and I just go on, and when my wife passed away, the pickup part just wasn't there. I wanted to go, but I didn't know where. And so the thing about it is that it took me a lot longer than my normal snap and everything gets back to where I can handle things again. It took me a lot longer to reach that place to where I could even carry on an extended conversation with someone. I mean, I could talk as long as you didn't talk very long. If you talked over that, I'd break down. But time heals wounds. That's true. But the wounds still leave scars. And a lot of times, some people's scars are grievous scars. And their memories are going to run deeper. And I learned a long time ago, and I'm going to say this again, we can't necessarily make people's problems go away. And especially someone had a deep connection to someone, a love connection to someone. That connection is, when it seems like it's broken, that's not what actually happens, but it feels like that at first. And is that that there's the sense of loss can be overwhelming. And I mean, you'd be surprised. You go to the grocery store and somebody tells you how much money you owe them, and you're thinking, what do I do?
Yeah,
I mean, and then it kind of snaps to you and things. But don't rush yourself, but don't let yourself slide back like Pastor Scott's comment was there. So you got to. And a lot of this is, and I found this out too. People are a whole lot stronger than they think they are.
Yeah.
Maybe we don't want to be, but we really are. A lot of people are much stronger. I've seen people deal with things, and it's really just a blessing to be a part of being able to participate. But if you get stuck, it's the kind that you need somebody to text you or find out. If you haven't heard from somebody in a while, it don't hurt to text them. I have people me, and I give them a call, send them a text, ask how they're doing, and that sometimes prompts a conversation. So, but I like what Tanya said. Be bold enough to just say, look, you know.
And don't negate the different people's, like the importance that you have in other people's lives. And I had to remember that, especially after I lost my mom, because there was a lot of who my mom was to me, and that really kind of helped some in my identity, not putting her before the Lord in any way, but she was good about speaking to me about the beauty that she saw in me. And that was incredibly powerful, especially as a woman and as a mother myself. Right. Hearing those things were very powerful. And but I had to remember that I lost an incredibly precious person to me. But at the same time, I had an amazing father. I had an amazing husband, my daughters, my brother and his wife. And other family, my sister-in-laws and mother-in-law at the time. I mean, I had other people in my life that needed me to be healthy and wanted me to be here and be present. Right. And so that is important. And I also just want to say to be careful when we're talking about supporting those who are grieving, to be careful to try and not ever say that you know exactly how someone feels. Of course. Because absolutely. When you had mentioned earlier about everybody's grieving process is different depending on who they are and the relationships that they had. And so I have lost my mom, but I've never lost a spouse. So although I can relate to the things that my dad went through, I do not know how my dad feels because of that. And the same of me losing a mom is very different than a friend of mine that has lost a mother. Absolutely. You know, it's very different in those relationships. But to understand that we can relate to others, but we don't know exactly how someone feels. Absolutely.
And you mentioned something that's important to realize, though. Don't forget that the person that you lost has other people that lost them too.
Yes,
absolutely.
And that's why they're there. And so a lot of times we don't think about there's others there that are suffering that loss with you. And they may be there with you, but you don't realize that they're suffering that loss with you. And like I said, people are stronger than they think they are. But give yourself a couple of things. Give yourself some time, but also build that relationship with the Lord as much as you can. Yes. Because when that person that you know that's gone is a Christian believer, born again, you're going to have another opportunity to see them again. And it'll be a wonderful place, a wonderful time. And so generally when I do a memorial services, that's what I talk about. Yeah. Because that's the truth of what's happening. And I've had so many people over the years that have wanted me to do their memorial service, and tell me, they would, this is what I want you to do, And I've had so many people that would say, this is what I want you to do. And over the years, I've done a lot more memorial services than I have weddings. Yeah. But, and I've always considered it a privilege and an honor to be able to do that, to help people through that part of time that they're going to be, and then be available to help and I think that's one thing that we need to remember, is that we need to help make ourselves available.
Yes.
Because people don't want to, people that are grieving don't want to bother you.
Yeah, it's so hard, yeah.
And this right there is something that we need to realize is they don't want to bother you. And what if I could get you to understand anything is you're not bothering.
Right,
Yes.
right, yeah.
Absolutely.
And as a pastor, this is what I do.
Yeah, yeah.
And so it's not bothering me. And so, but it's not bothering your friends either. Your friends want to help. And sometimes it's a shame but we don't realize, how many people out there really love you and care for you.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I want to address real quick, Ashlyn commented, and when we were talking earlier about kind of just going through the motions, she said, this is so true. When Nana died, I got so good at going through the motions to the point that I even thought I was okay. It took a friend to tell me that I needed to stop what I was doing, and I didn't realize I'd pushed down my grieving until then, which is very true. Sometimes I feel like we can kind of convince ourselves, and end up believing it if we do that for too long. But I absolutely love what you both just touched on, and I kind of want to ask. We've talked a little bit about other people supporting you, but I wanted to just see if you would elaborate on supporting yourself, as hard as that can sound. What are some things? Of course, I can speak on when I lost my grandfather. The way I coped, I guess, or one of the big ways I grieved was, of course, through prayer, talking to the Lord, and running. That was a big thing in my life. So what are some ways that you have or could support yourself?
Well, I'd suggest get a motorcycle.
Yeah, that's so true. That's what you did.
Yeah. No,
I do not need a motorcycle.
No, I'm not kidding. I'm just kidding. For me, that was, where you ran, I rode.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And
You really did.
I would take off, and I just would pray until my head cleared, and then sometimes I'd have to rent a motel room before I came home the next day. But
Right.
that was what I did, and then a couple of my friends, one of them said, "Where are you going?"
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to just ride. Okay, I'll go with you. And then another one came along, and we'd just ride. But coping with yourself, one is, if you're a person of prayer, that time that you spend with God is going to be precious. And you can talk to God about it. And, I've always been a person that talks to God just like he's a person, because that's the way he is to me. So God will help you. It doesn't mean he's going to always tell you exactly what you want to hear, but he's going to help you, and that's good. If you like to run. One thing that you got to be careful of, though, you can try to lose yourself in work.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I did too. And but it didn't work out for me, because it always wound up that what I was doing, I would be doing something for an hour and then just literally forget, why I'm doing it, So it was just the mechanism wasn't working correctly. But it was just, like I said, a few people.
It was riding motorcycles and buying motorcycles for a little bit. Remember?
Well, I'll tell you the other thing that I did.
Yes, it was true.
I'll tell you the other thing that I did was I went and preached in several different countries in the world.
You did, yeah.
I went to Africa. I went to
Romania
Kenya.
again.
I went to Uganda, Romania, Bulgaria. I went all over, and I went to Romania a couple of times after that, and Bulgaria and Kenya and Africa. And so Brother Cook, G.L. Cook, has written a book about the end times, and I was with G.L. in, I think, I can't remember, I think it might have been Kenya or Uganda, but And he was talking about the millennial kingdom of King Jesus, but he was talking about the beautiful city of God, the new city, the Holy Jerusalem. And he said something that at that point, and listen, I've been a preacher for a long time, but he said something at that point. He said, when someone passes from this life, that city is where they go. And to me, it just clicked in my head. So all those questions that I'd had for so long just kind of clicked. Now, you have to understand, this was a month and a half after my wife passed away. I mean, it wasn't very long at all, but that just kind of clicked in my head and was something that just helped my heart begin a healing process that it really needed. So there's just, just understanding that God has this, and that we have to give ourselves time, but God is going to help us through it. Right, like I said, I rode a motorcycle. You like to run. Other people, there's other things that they like to do, but that energy that you have to keep moving, I think, is important.
Mm-hmm. 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 Tanya, would you like to touch on that a little bit?
I have to be honest. I am not the best. I'm still growing up in that area when it comes to taking care of myself. I would say probably me, it would be probably talking with others, like sharing, for me, like just reminiscing, that's important for me. I know just lots of conversations with, with Scott and with Carla, and just different times,
you
just
did
sharing.
Journaling too.
I would journal some. Generally it's like taking care of others.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But then the problem is that it's still there. Mm-hmm. And so I think about even the funeral time period, and it really wasn't until several days later that things began to really hit me.
Right.
After, because I kind of dive into just tending, and so yeah, that's probably the most. Like I would think, like Ashland worship music is so big, so I think that's something, just being in the attitude of worship and hearing worship music. I think all different types of ways. I do think people use journaling. Some people therapy.
Well,
I don't know
that you said that, because I think that's an important reminder to make sure you're not using the ways that you cope with things in an unhealthy way.
Yeah.
And I can say that I personally did kind of fall into a little bit of a habit where I love to run, but I was starting to kind of use it in a way that wasn't the most beneficial, and it was a little bit detrimental for me.
Yeah.
And so I think that's such an important reminder is there are ways you can cope and ways you can deal, but make sure you're not using those to block out the grieving, if that makes sense, or block out what you're feeling.
Take a healthy approach to
Absolutely.
it.
Absolutely. And so before we end tonight, I wanted to revisit one point that we spoke on earlier, and that was that grief it's not all bad, and it's not all a bad thing. And there's actually a quote, I don't know who it's by, but it's something along the lines of where there's deep grief and where there's deep pain, there was great love.
Oh,
yes,
absolutely.
And I think that's just such an important reminder. So if you guys would like to say anything on that before we end tonight, or just any reminders you have for
one thing I would like to say is, if you're a person that's watching, or someone that knows someone that's grieving, let others be close to you.
Yes.
Let others still be your friend. Let others, let them help you. And one of the great things about this is people around you, your friends and your loved ones, they aren't professional grief counselors, but they love you.
Yes.
And that is going to make it that much more important to you as you do. And, just like my friend that lives down the street. He loves me, and but I mean, he never wanted me to come eat breakfast with him, and none of that stuff. He never wanted to bring breakfast down to the house, stuff like that. But when he saw that I wasn't getting out like I needed to, he stepped in and let people help you. And you know, he makes pretty good tacos, man. So,
well, and being intentional in that is so, like, it was neat to watch the men that gathered around my dad to be able to just speak life. And, you know, just even thinking about the rides that you used to go on, and thinking, like, Brother Wayne is now with the Lord. And what an integral part that he played in just encouraging my dad to, like, come on, let's go do something. I would love to share a scripture if I can.
Of course, absolutely.
I'm going to read it just because it's I just want to make sure I get this exactly the way it is. But it's found in 2 Corinthians 1:3. Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, the Father of compassion and the God of all comfort, who comforts us in all our troubles, so that we can comfort those in any trouble with the comfort that we ourselves received from God. So, I mean, it to me is a perfect scripture for what we're talking about this evening. Absolutely. Is like the things we walk through, we can turn those things around and use them for the glory of God, and that we can find beauty in the ashes. Like all of the loss that we've had, it's not in vain, and that we can then turn around and speak life into someone else and let them know that there's hope. You know, it will hurt, but one thing I will stand on the mountaintops and say, regardless of what I face, there is hope in the Lord.
yes.
And we do have hope in him.
And
Absolutely.
I just want to reiterate that grieving is not all bad. It's a process that I think you need to go through. And I just want to be honest with you. Death is a part of what happens in this world. And the last enemy that's going to be defeated is death.
Yes,
And-
that's awesome.
Amen.
When you think of that,
that's
that's really cool.
And so that's the reason we fight against it so hard, and one of the reasons we feel it so intensely is because it seems like things are taken out of time. And but just remember that grieving is a natural part of dealing with a loss in this world. And I promise you that God will help you. You got people around you that love you, that'll help you. I know people that think they're alone in this world, but they have so many people around them that love them.
Absolutely.
And that's the reason I say again, if you feel like you're alone, I want you to look around you, because there's people that love you and they want to help.
Yes.
Absolutely.
And that's a lie from the enemy. And I
That's a lie
have
from the
literally I've been dealing with that recently, just over the last several weeks, even in my own life. So it is a lie from the enemy. You're not alone. You are not forgotten. And the enemy does not have hold on your life, regardless of what loss you may be experiencing right now. Just know that there is hope, and the
you are
Lord
loved.
loves you. Yep, the Lord, we love you. The Lord loves
Absolutely.
you, and He's faithful.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both so much.
Thank
I
you.
enjoyed
Thank
this
you.
conversation. And thank all of you, or thank you all. My mind's a little all over the place, but we are so blessed that you joined us this evening. We pray that this ministered to you, and that once again you're just reminded of the hope there is in the Lord, and that you are not alone. Before we close out tonight, make sure that you like us here on Facebook. You can follow us over on Instagram, and we hope that you can join us next Wednesday evening for our next episode. Once again, thank you all so very much, and we pray that you all have a very blessed rest of your week. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.